the starting point is that we cannot put additional home funds into the project during the period of affordability. In the 2013 rule, there was a new section added to the rule, section 92.210, okay, 92.210, that deals with troubled home-assisted projects. And what this section of the rule does is give HUD two administrative options that they had actually used in the past but required a formal waiver from the secretary.
Very complicated.
Okay, which is a much more onerous process. And so now, from an administrative standpoint, the Office of Affordable Housing Programs at headquarters, the program office that runs the home program, can approve two types of workouts that otherwise can't be done, under normal circumstances. So, for a project that's no longer viable, the PGA can work with first you start with your field office, and then together you're going to go to headquarters. And they can seek permission to invest additional home funds, notwithstanding the general blanket prohibition that we can't put more home funds in. So we're 12 years down the road and we've got a property that's really in trouble, right? HUD could approve a workout that allowed the PGA to add additional money to the project at that time. They could do that for additional rehab. They could actually do it to establish or reestablish project reserves, which is also an interesting thing because normally we couldn't use home funds for reserves, okay? So they can do that. They also, in certain circumstances, so these are really kind of different scenarios based on the market conditions in the area, really. In other cases, you heard me say that PJs have the option, always have the option, to over-designate the number of home units. So even though cost allocation said I only needed 10 units, I said I want 20, okay? In some projects and in some markets, in markets where the market rate rent is significantly higher than the home rent, right? If I have a property that's run into trouble, I may be able to financially fix that property by saying, I only really needed 10 units. So if I let these other 10 that were sort of additional home units above and beyond the minimum requirement transition to being market rate units, as the people leave, instead of renting them again to home eligible tenants, I'll let you rent them to market rate people at a higher rent, whatever the market will bear. I may be able to get the property back into balance financially. Normally you may not, the PJ may not, reduce the number of home units in the property after completion. The only time they can do that is it requires HUD approval. So you've got to go to HUD, and in this case you've got to go to headquarters to get the approval for that. Either of these workout options is going to require that there be some sort of an MOU between the property owner, the PJ, HUD, as well as potentially other parties, right? The lender, the tax credit investor, whatever. HUD is going to look at these with workouts. Workouts, how many of you have ever had to negotiate a workout? You had a bad project, or you work for a PJ and you had to negotiate a workout on a struggling project, right? You want to learn how to underwrite? Start as an asset manager, right? Workouts are like great training on figuring out how to structure projects in the first place. And the thing about workouts is the problem is always bigger than you think, right? It's like the iceberg. Iceberg, dead ahead, and you only see 10% of it, right? It's always a bigger problem than you think. They have to be over-engineered and they have to be comprehensive, right? So we start to see the problem in the property through this angle, like, oh, wow, like they've got some compliance issues, or they've not been able to keep it up from a physical standpoint. But when you sort of look a little deeper, you start to see that often that symptom is just one of many things that are going on, and it's the most visible problem. So workouts have to be over-engineered. And so what's going to happen is you don't just kind of like get on the phone and say, hey, will you let us put some more money in, right? HUD's going to look very closely. They're going to want to see that you've really comprehensively evaluated what's going on with the property, what are all of the problems, what are the sources of those problems, and how is it that what we're doing is really going to lead to success moving forward. They're also going to look and say, everybody with a vested interest in this property needs to be helping shoulder the burden. Don't just come to the PJ expecting them to fix your problem, right? What are you doing? What is the first mortgage lender doing? What is the tax credit investor doing? What are the other people that are involved in this project doing to all contribute to getting the ship righted and moving back in the right path, okay? And so often when you ask for one of these, often you'll actually get assigned technical assistance. And in many cases, not every time, but in most cases, HUD will assign a technical assistance provider to come in and kind of act on their behalf to evaluate, have they really analyzed what's going on? Have they got to the source of all the problems? Have we addressed all of the different issues in the workout? You know, and this, that, and the other thing. And then there will be an MOU that really kind of outlines all of that. So this is important because it gives us the opportunity. You know, sometimes I once had to negotiate a workout for a property because of bed bugs, right? We had a senior property, 14-story tower that had been none of this probably really matters, but it had been like a 236 conversion. We put some home money in, we put some tax credits in, we did a first mortgage. This was when I worked for the state agency. Great developer, great management company, right? Somehow somebody brought in some bed bugs. You're in a senior tower, right? Next thing you go, like by the time they found them, we got like 5 stories of this tower with like bed bug infestation. They did everything right. They identified the problem, they got on top of it, they brought in the right people, you know, we got people out, we helped them, you know, we paid for hotels, all of that stuff to get them out to do the treatment. But now what happens? It's a small town. Everybody knows, like, who's going to put grandma in the building with the bed bugs? So we have a property that for the last 5 years has operated at, economically has operated at 98.5% full, right? Great, great performance. And now it goes to 30% vacant, right? And it took 3 years to get it sort of overcome those problems because it's just a challenge. So, you know, there's a lot of bad things that can happen that sort of nobody did anything wrong. And so having some additional options within the home program to sort of say, how can we all work together to get this thing fixed? Now, these options may not have fixed that bed bug problem, right, or fixed that issue. And ultimately, you know, what we ended up doing was negotiating sort of a deferral of the payment on the first mortgage. The tax credit investor kicked in a little bit for operating deficits in the meantime. The management company, which was a related party, waived its management fee for 2 years, and everybody contributed. This wasn't one we had to go to headquarters on, but you know, that's what it took. And in this case, we were lucky because there wasn't a management problem. There wasn't a problem with, you know, the town's economy had collapsed because the primary employer packed up and moved to Mexico. Right? That was a more difficult workout to do because what are you going to do? You know, this, that, and the other thing. So, but the point is everybody contributed, we all had to work it, and we had to get on top of it.